All right, so this is where we finished up um, looking at some of the issues surrounding why people felt there needed to be some kind of reform or change in the existing church. And this group or this list is part of a bigger group that will add their names to why we need to reform. So far we've started with Erasmus. You read about him, what and why he thought that the Catholic Church needed to reform. And our next guy is going to be part of a bigger group. So this is what we're going to be looking at. I kind of have this picture out of sequence. You guys don't have this picture. But this is what the selling of indulgences is going to look like. The priest is a priest named Tetzel. He's holding, and if you could see it even closely, it says Leo X. Pope Leo X would like to rebuild St. Peter's Cathedral, the big cathedral that we know today as the Vatican. St. Peter's Cathedral is significant in that it holds the bones of St. Peter, and the Pope says this holy person needs a better place to reside. So we need to build this. Well, in order to build it, you need funds. And one of the ways the Catholic Church thought that they could gain funds was by selling these indulgences. And so Friar Tetzel would go from place to place selling these indulgences, which were essentially get out of purgatory free cards. To the best of my knowledge, the Catholic Church is the only church that believes in this place called purgatory. It's an in-between place where your soul kind of resides until you're judged. Correct me at any point if I'm getting this wrong. But your soul waits there to be judged. If you've ever attended a Catholic church, one of the more predominant things that might seem not unusual, but different, is lots of candles, lots of little teeny votive candles lit all over. People light those candles for a variety of reasons, but one of them is for people that have passed away to help pray them out of purgatory. What these indulgences say is you get a get out of purgatory free card and you get to go straight to heaven. Essentially, that's what these are. What people like Martin Luther and other people will begin to be concerned about is that people are buying these things and not buying these things, these indulgences, and then not doing the other things that they should do as a good, strong, practicing Catholic. They just see that as their ace in the hole, that I don't have to be like this other person because I bought this thing. And that's what we'll get into when we look at Martin Luther today. It again is really important to understand that Martin Luther is part of the Catholic Church. He is a monk, and he, as a monk, is also an educator, and he's a professor at the University of Wittenberg. And part of his job at the University of Wittenberg is teaching the Catholic faith. And as a really good professor and writing his great lesson plans, he starts really getting into the reading and, more importantly, the translation of the sacred text, the Bible. And as he begins his own course of study as a professor, he begins to see, and this is the part, again, that's important to connect with the Renaissance, this idea of thinking. He begins to see that two things that the Catholic Church requires for salvation, faith and good works, were not necessary. So part of, again, the essential part is for people to obtain salvation is faith and good works. It is one of the reasons why organizations like Catholic Charities are so significant and important throughout the world. People who are members of the Catholic Church, they have to do good works. They have to participate in charitable endeavors. They have to do those things as part of their religious beliefs. But Luther says, I don't really think that says that anywhere in the Bible. I've read this thing. It doesn't say it. All it really says is faith. All you got to do is believe. That's all it really says. And that God grants that salvation because God is merciful. And because of that, you don't need to do anything else. There is nothing else that you need to do to obtain your salvation. And this is where Martin Luther begins his battle with the Catholic Church. Here's Martin Luther with his very astute, smart self. And so, those of you that are Protestant, the fundamental belief in Protestantism, no matter what faith within the Protestant sect you belong to, is faith alone. That's all you need. That God's grace is not earned by doing good works alone. And Luther, because he is a rational human being and thinking like a math person, because this is true and because B is true, then C is true. The belief arrived at these beliefs through the Bible, and so the Bible and not the church becomes the primary source of religious truth. So currently, the Catholic Church has 3 things that it says is a part of their faith. The sacred text, the Bible, papal doctrine, what the Pope says, and church tradition. Those are the 3 things that are necessary for the Catholic, as part of the Catholic Church. So, why, according to Luther, would buying these indulgences interfere? Because he says you are purchasing something that does not connect, right? You are buying your way into heaven. You know, that little stairway to heaven. I'm looking at Corbin's shirt there. Buying that stairway to heaven, this is not what this is about. So, Luther, because he is a professor and because he is an academic, he writes this all down. And he writes this thing called the 95 Theses. And it is a list of 95 things he finds wrong with the Catholic Church. And first among these is the selling of indulgences. As soon as the coin in the coffer rings, a soul from purgatory springs. And this is what he says. That is not the way that works. He says he feels that it harms people's chance at salvation. So in 1517, on October 31st, Halloween, but it wasn't really Halloween, he posted on the door of Castle Church his 95 Theses. This posting on the door of the church, 50% of historians believe, yeah, that's what he really did. 50% said, no, he didn't really print it. He didn't really post it there. But posting something on a Catholic door church, I think probably for most people sounds like something not done. But in that time period of 1517, the door of a church would have been like a bulletin board. It would have been very much like where people would have put things for other people to read. It wouldn't have been sacrilegious, or it wouldn't have been like contemptible for him to do that. It would have been a place for him to put it that made it available for everyone to read. And again, lots of paintings about Martin Luther hammering on the door. The reality is we don't know if he really actually hammered it on the door. The actuality is the idea of the printing press. So why did we learn anything at all about that printing press? Because that is what was important in this movement of Martin Luther's ideas. Martin Luther without the printing press is just a crazy monk in northern Germany with ideas. Martin Luther with the printing press now becomes a sweeping change across Europe. And I'm sorry it takes you a while to figure out where we're at. The 95 Theses attack the practice of selling indulgences. Thousands upon thousands of copies of this will be printed and distributed all throughout Germany. Pope Leo X does not take Luther serious at all, or the 95 Theses. Pope Leo X says, yep, another one of those drunken German monks that has too much time on their hands, it'll all go away. This is one of the more famous paintings of Martin Luther nailing, supposedly, his 95 Theses on the wall at Castle Church. So Martin Luther has really committed heresy in printing these 95 things, or writing these 95 things that he finds wrong with the Catholic Church. And so essentially, he has now put himself in a position of great harm from members of the church. So in 1520, 3 years later, Luther called for the German princes to overthrow the papacy and establish a reformed German church. This is now heresy. He has now committed a crime. And I need for you to understand, this just isn't something that the Pope is upset with. This is criminal. Again, the idea of Martin Luther calling for the princes to overthrow the papacy. One of the most important reasons he wants the German princes to overthrow the papacy, and one of the reasons why the German princes want to do that, is now they no longer have to pay their tithe to Rome. They can keep their money in their own church. Luther begins attacking the church's sacraments. So first he starts with indulgences. I don't believe in these things. Then he moves to sacraments. The Catholic Church has 7. He says there's really only 2 that are mentioned in the Bible. That would be communion and baptism. That's it. Luther also believed that clergy should be able to marry, and he has a very rational response to that. One of the important things that happens for people who want to be married in the Catholic Church and have their marriage performed by a priest, they have to go through a series of meetings. I don't remember what it's called, but they have to go through a series of marriage type, it's not counseling, but marriage meetings with the priest. And the priest talks with them. And Martin Luther says, how would a priest know anything about being married? How would a priest know how to counsel? And the Catholic Church says, well, I don't have to be married to understand relationships. So Luther believes, again, that clergy should be married. He probably believes that because he meets a nun that he likes a lot, and now he wants to be married to her. He does get married to a nun. Luther continued to emphasize his new doctrine, salvation through faith alone. This is the cornerstone of all Protestant faiths. No matter what you are, Methodist, Episcopalian, Church of the Nazarene, Church of the Rock, First Christian Church, every Protestant faith starts with faith alone is what gives you salvation. So the crime that Martin Luther committed causes him to be excommunicated. And to be excommunicated means essentially you're not a person. You are not given any of the sacraments. You cannot receive communion. You cannot receive last rites. You are a criminal. And should you come alongside Martin Luther in 1521 and you capture him and you take him to the Pope, it would be just like the Wild West Wanted poster. You would have been paid money to bring him to the Catholic Church. In that excommunication, you are put on trial. And it is a trial fairly similar to what a trial would be like if you, in this time period, you would be called in front of a judge, and this judge is going to be the Holy Roman Emperor, and you are asked to account for what you did. And so Martin Luther is brought to trial before the Legislative Assembly, and that Legislative Assembly is made up of church officials of the Holy Roman Empire at Worms. And Martin Luther is put in front of a table, and by this time, the guy has written like 250 books. He has all kinds of books that he has written, and they are piled up all on a table in front of him. And Martin Luther is asked by the Holy Roman Emperor to renounce your beliefs, take back everything. Every person in Martin Luther's life is encouraging him to take it back. Martin, you're going to die. They're going to kill you. Just take it back. Renounce. Say, I don't believe this anymore. Burn my books. Help me, church, back on the right path. Every person in Martin Luther's life is encouraging him to renounce those beliefs. And as he stands in front of Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, he says, I cannot. And actually what he says is, I can do no more, in a sense that he feels the faith that he now believes in will not allow him to do that. In our course, in the next couple of chapters, we're going to meet a lot of people who have to stand in front of the church and take things back. Martin Luther is not going to take things back. When we get to Sir Thomas More, and he's going to get his head cut off, Henry VIII says, you just tell me, Henry More, that I'm the head of the church. And Thomas More says, no, you are not the head of my church. The Pope is the head of my church. Henry says, you're going to get your head cut off if you don't. Thomas More says, sorry. His wife is saying, please just say it with your words. You don't have to believe it with your heart. And these devoutly religious people say, I can't do that. I can't deny my heart by saying these words. Our only person that's going to stand up in front of the Catholic Church and say, okay, I take it all back, is going to be Galileo. And why can Galileo say that? Because it's exactly what he says. You can tell me to take it back, and I can tell you that the world's not spinning around the sun, but guess what? The world is spinning around the sun. It's kind of like when you're made to apologize for something that you don't feel like you need to apologize for, right? And you either stand firm, like, I'm not saying I'm sorry because I didn't do anything wrong, or you say, you can make me say sorry, but I'm not still sorry. So these are the things that these people will be confronted with. And Martin Luther is going to say, I can't. My belief in my faith and my God says I can't do that. So all of his books are burned. And now he says he has, for lack of a better word, a warrant for his arrest. Martin Luther, you must be arrested and presented to the Pope. You're getting ready to die. However, Luther is now protected by a very important Frederick of Saxony. And Frederick says, Luther, I kind of believe what you're saying, and I want to hear some more. So why don't you come hang out at my castle? And Luther heads to Wittenberg Castle. And while he's at Wittenberg Castle, and the reason that we learn anything at all about Martin Luther is that he writes the German Bible. He writes it in the vernacular of which the German people speak. And as a result of that, spreads the ideas of Lutheranism. If he were to have continued this Bible, the translation in Latin, where many people wouldn't have been able to read, again, the idea of the spread of this new faith called Lutheranism probably would have been very small. But because he writes a Bible, or he doesn't write it, I should really change that. He translates the Bible into German. It spreads the idea of Lutheranism. And this new Bible that he writes gives us the first written language for Germany, their language, again, in writing, and begins to set up the important parts of writing. Let me flip to this side and see if this is where we want to go. Yep, we got two more. Okay, so the rise of Lutheranism. Luther's religious movement becomes a revolution. And a lot of it is because this idea of taking control of their church from Rome. So German rulers say, we don't have to send our tithe or our monies to Rome anymore. And this is a very simplistic view of this. But the Catholic Church wrote out tithe bills to the King of France and to the King of England and to the King of Saxony and to the Duke of Bohemia. Here's your bill. You must pay this. German princes say, if we don't belong to this faith any longer, we can keep all the money ourselves. And this is when this religious movement stops being a religious movement and becomes a political movement. And it becomes a strongly rooted political movement. Because what is important when we think about how can we factually say this becomes a political movement instead of a religious movement? Because in 30 years, when the wars of religion are over, all of these people that jumped ship to Lutheranism, for the most part, are going to return back to Catholicism. The only place that Protestantism stays strong and in a majority will be Northern Germany, where Martin Luther is from, and Great Britain. Everybody else goes back to their church. All of the Italians go back. All of the southern German states go back. Munich, Bavaria, all of France goes back. Because this turns instead of into a religious movement, it becomes a break with what appears to be oppressive economic tax for these German princes. Peasants are going to revolt. Luther is going to side with the lords. That will be a big shocking thing as well. Luther believed that the states and the lords were called to maintain peace, and it was the duty of the lords to crush this revolt. And this will be one of the beginnings of those people that did convert to the idea of Protestantism, moving back to Catholicism. So Luther depends more on the German state to spread his religious, which moves it in again to a political realm instead of religion. Wait a minute. I think we need to finish this. Sorry, people. We need to finish this. Yep. Okay. We just have 3 more. So politics in the German Reformation. Luther's movement, again, is tied to politics. And Luther feels confident in saying this because it is, again, part of the idea of God wanting to spread peace and order. The Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V, who has a giant empire, Spain, the Austrian lands, Bohemia, Hungary, the lowlands, Milan, Naples, Spain, all the territories in the New World. Obviously, it's his goal to have it all remain Catholic. That's his goal. That's what he has set out as part of his duty as Holy Roman Emperor. So, his biggest problem is France. Charles V and Francois I had warred many, many years. The Pope always sides with France and Francois. And this is what helps Martin Luther, because by the time Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, is going to bring troops into Germany to try to stop the spread of Lutheranism, the German princes are already well organized. We have a small little fight that happens, and Charles V is defeated. The Catholic Church will be defeated and will bring about the first end of these religious wars. I'll come back to this one if you need it. Charles V was forced to make peace with the Lutheran princes, and as a result, in 1555, signed what's called the Peace of Augsburg. The Peace of Augsburg is a very important document historically speaking, but religiously speaking, this is an extremely important document because it made the Catholic Church recognize the Protestant faith. So the Peace of Augsburg accepted the division of Christianity in Germany, accepted that German states could choose between Catholicism and Lutheranism, and that all of these states would have the same rights. Now, here's what you can't think. This is not religious tolerance. If I am the Duke of Saxony, I choose the religion that everyone's going to be. I get to pick it. And I can pick it anytime that I want. So if I decide here in Saxony, we're in Southern Europe, we're going to remain Catholic, Any of you can leave if you choose to go to a state that's practicing Protestantism. The problem is most of you are too poor to do that. And so pretty much your religious fate and the faith that you get to practice is determined by whoever was in control of your country, which is something that if you are really sincere about your faith and religion is not something that, or is not the way that you would have best been advised religiously by saying, I'm picking everybody in here is going to be Catholic now, whether you want to or not. I've decided now I want to be Protestant because I don't want to pay the Pope any more of my money, and now we're all Protestant. That is really going to happen, and it's going to lead us down a path called the 30 Years' War, which is a horrific 30 years of fighting in these central Germanic states about if you're going to be Catholic or if you're going to be Lutheran. And it is and brings great destruction, both economically and especially religiously, to those Germanic states. All right, any questions about all of that? So you're going to look today at Martin Luther, the Rebel. There's a bunch of documents that you are going to read and look at. Again, normally we would do this with a group. You and your partner would talk about them, what they look like. Hopefully, maybe by like the middle of April, we can get into some of our more fun stuff and we can all be a little more comfortable working with partners. It is due tomorrow. You will have all of class period tomorrow to work on it. I think there's 13 questions maybe, but there's a lot of reading and interpreting documents that you're doing. Please make sure you read the directions. I put it on every set. Answers must be in complete sentences and complete thoughts. Make sure you address all parts of the question. And this is Martin Luther as a rebel, right? He is a lawbreaker. And then as doing so, he is taking great risk with his life as a result. All right, questions, anybody?